Hey guys, so today's video is going to be another versus video. Hopefully this is helpful for you all. So today I'm going to be comparing two different palettes that are very similar but very different at the same time. I'm talking about the New York Color Lovatics by Demi palette versus the Urban Decay Original Naked palette. So before we start, I just want to talk a little bit about both of these products. So of course we have a drugstore product versus a more higher end product. This palette is around $4.99, so around $5, and this one is $54. Also, another thing to notice is the packaging. As you can see here, the Naked Original palette, it has the gold letters. It's of this velvety finish on the inside. It does have a mirror and it does have a place to put a brush. It did also come with a brush. So that is what that looks like, and it even says Naked on the inside. As for the Lovatics by Demi palette, it does not have a mirror, as you can see. It is this very cheap packaging, but I guess that kind of comes with the fact that you're paying only $4.99 for it. As you can see, it doesn't have a mirror or anything like that. It does have some little applicators here where if you do take them out, you probably could fit a brush in there. I'm going to be showing you guys swatches on both palettes, as well as what colors are similar and which colors are not and what's the difference. So these are what all of the Demi Lovato shadows look like. They actually have really good payoff and they're very pigmented. The only thing I found was that they can be a little like dusty slash crumbly. When I swatched them, some of them still stayed kind of like a little crumbly, but they're actually pretty good quality. I'm not sure if they're muddy, but we'll see once I actually do some eyeshadow on my eyes. But for right now, this palette is actually really pretty. It has different colors, and you can see even the light colors that I have up here are just like perfect either highlight shades or like inner corner shades. And then you can pretty much create like a really natural look to like a very pretty smoky look, if that makes sense. So here are all the shades side by side. As you can see, there are some very clear differences now that I have the actual swatches. So I think for the most part, the first two shades are exactly the same. The color payoff is the same. I've always had a trouble with the Sin shade from the Naked palette. I feel like it never applies evenly and it has a ton of fallout. So I really want to see how much fallout the one from the Demi Lovato palette has. And then the next color, which is Naked from the Naked palette, is a little bit more ash toned slash blue toned in that palette. In the Demi Lovato palette, it has a little bit more of an orange tone to it, which is my personal preference. Sidecar, I want to say, is also a little bit different. The Sidecar kind of shade in the Lovatics palette is a little bit more bronzy slash orangey. And then the one in the Naked palette has like almost like a taupey tone to it and a little bit more silver glitter. The next shade, which is Buck from the Naked palette, the one in the Demi Lovato palette is a little bit more ash toned as opposed to that more like orangey tone. So the color Half Baked over here, as you can see, has a slightly more yellow tone to it as opposed to the one in the Demi Lovato palette that has a little bit more of a copper tone to it. Right next to that we have a Smog, and Smog is a lot different from the one in the Demi Lovato palette. Smog has a little bit more of like a greenish tone to it, whereas the one in the Demi Lovato palette has more of like a taupey purpley tone to it. The next one, which is the color Dark Horse, it's nothing alike. The color in the Dark Horse palette has a little bit more of a green shade, and the one in the Demi Lovato palette has more of like this chocolatey espresso shade. So I feel like you can't really compare those, but personally I prefer more of like this darker chocolatey brown kind of color. The next color is Toasted, but they're actually almost identical, I want to say. The only difference is that Toasted in the Naked palette has a little bit more of a copper tone to it, and the one in the Demi Lovato palette has a little bit more of like, again, that like taupey purple undertone to it. The next shade is Hustle, and the Hustle, the last three colors from the Naked palette I had the hardest time trying to swatch. They weren't staying pigmented. They weren't coming off as nice as all the other colors in the Naked palette were, like just smooth and even. I actually had the hardest time with the last three shades. So like I said, the next one is Hustle, and I like the color. I just wish that it could be a tiny bit darker and just a tiny bit more pigmented, because as you can see, the color over here from the Demi Lovato palette, it actually comes out very, very smooth and even. The next color is Creep, and I really like this color, but it does not apply evenly. I'm not sure if you guys can tell. It's just, it wasn't applying evenly, and I don't know if that's just my palette or if that's kind of all the Naked palettes. But the one from the Demi Lovato palette, I think I liked it better. I keep calling it the Demi Lovato palette, but it's actually the Lovatics palette. I do like the next one because I feel like this is a little bit more black than the Creep color from the Naked palette. And then the last one, it's like a grayish bluish tone. I personally like the one in the Naked palette over the one in the Demi Lovato palette because it has a little bit more of like that glitter in it. But it is a little bit lighter, as you can see on my arm. This one has a little bit slightly more blue tone to it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the lightest shade of the palette, which is right here. And I'm going to take kind of like this flat brush and I'm going to place that on the highlight slash brow bone area of my eyebrow, or of my eye. I'm going to go ahead and take the fifth shade in, which is this one right here, and I'm going to go ahead and place that into my crease. Just keep your body moving how I like. Oh yeah, the music. Next, I'm going to be taking the seventh shade in, which is this color right here. I'm going to be just using my finger because you guys know that I like to use my finger whenever I'm doing like my eyelid kind of color. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my finger and apply this color all over the lid. Then I am going to go in a little bit with the second shade and I'm going to place that color right in the center of my eyelid just to kind of make it pop a little bit. Now I do want to add a little bit of a dark tone to my crease area. I'm going to be taking my, I don't know, this is like a pencil brush. I'm going to be taking the eighth color, which is right here, and I'm going to be placing that in my outer V area. Now I'm going to go in with that dark grayish black color, the second one from the end, and I'm just going to pop that into, again, my outer V area, and then hopefully kind of create a little bit more of like a dramatic smoky effect towards the end, and then just blend it all out. For the lower lash line, I'm going to go ahead and take this paddle brush, and I'm going to go ahead and take the dark chocolatey kind of color that's right here, and I'm going to go ahead and place that on my lower lash line, and I'm just going to smudge it out. Can I just say, this dark shade blends amazingly on my lower lash line. It is just buffing out really pretty and just giving me that really smoky look that I'm going for. And for the inner corner, I'm going to be taking that first shade we took, and I'm just going to be popping that into right here. I am wearing them again on my eyes today. I just wish they had a little bit more matte shades, because although some of these look matte, they have very fine glitter. I think this is a very versatile palette. I think it can match or go with a lot of different skin tones. I also do think that it is very, very similar to the original Naked palette. So just by putting them on top of each other, you can see that there is a ton of very similar shades in these palettes. A lot of them look the same in the pots but transfer a little bit differently, like you probably noticed from the last clips that you saw. So now onto the pigmentation. I think the pigmentation is actually very, very well for this New York color palette, considering it was only $4.99, $5. I think the pigmentation for this palette is absolutely amazing. The next thing I was thinking about was these darker colors, whether they would be a little easier or harder to swatch, which actually I had an easier time trying to swatch these last three shades from this palette, and it was a little bit harder to swatch the last three from the original Naked palette. As for the blendability, which was another thing I was having a little bit of trouble with, I was having to continuously try to blend out the colors. It was a little bit harder to blend out. Something that I discovered today was that if I try to blend in and it's not blending, to get a little bit more of the product and try to blend it, and it blends beautifully. So again, I think the blendability, it just takes a tiny bit more work than the shadows from the Naked palette. But as for the quality of these shadows, I say if you are a beginner, if you are maybe considering getting the Naked palette but don't want to spend the $54 on it, I definitely say this is a really good deal because again, you can play around with these colors, see if for one, if this is something you'd like. Also, if you already have the Naked palette, I feel like this is something very good to have in case you're traveling or anything like that, because something that I'm always scared of is that if I take any of my higher end palettes, if I put them in a bag or in my luggage and they accidentally break or fall or something, this is a higher investment. Whereas this one has pretty much very similar colors, but if it breaks, it's super easy to replace because it was only $5, if that makes sense. So again, that's just another little thing. Overall, I think this is a palette that I'm definitely going to be reaching for. As you can see, I have them on my eyes right now, and for some reason I feel that the colors and tones from this palette suit my eye color a little bit better. I do have brown eyes, but with certain eyeshadows I can make my eyes look a little bit more like a caramely brown. So I feel like this is very good at doing that. If you have dark brown eyes like I do, this might be a palette you might want to look into. So thank you all for watching. If there's any other product you guys would like me to compare or do another versus video, go ahead and leave whichever product you would like me to try out down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye guys.